All right.
All right, everybody. So here we are. I asked Lavina to meet me at Rec tonight, and she so graciously took time to share with all of us her experiences at the hobby unit, the
Mm-hmm.
William P. Hobby Unit. I believe that his middle initial was P.
Yes.
But so yeah, when we're talking about hobby, we're not talking about Hobby Airport in Houston, although I
We're
believe
talking about Hobby Hill.
yeah, we talking about Hobby Hill. So I'm really excited for you to be here and just to share with everybody, not just your experience at Hobby, but the work that you do and how far you've come in your journey. So tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. So my name's Lavina Perkins, and full time, I'm a licensed chemical dependency counselor. If you don't know what that is, it's basically an alcohol and drug counselor. And so full time every day, I go to work and I do individual counseling and group counseling for people with all types of addiction, mainly working with Houston's homeless population. Um, and I'm also a fellow with TAVP, which is Texas After Violence Project. Um, and that's what I do. And I'm a full time student, getting ready to graduate. I'm like in countdown mode right now. I got like 7 weeks of school left. So I'll be finishing up my master's degree in May.
It's
So, and so
amazing. I always just am amazed at the work you're doing, and also people may remember you from when there was a big event at the Capitol when COVID started. So tell us a little bit about that.
absolutely. So right when COVID started, I believe it started like that. December is really of 19 is when it really started, and then it really picked up and units shut down. I think in March, if I want to, in March of 2020, if I recall right, is when the units shut down, cut off visitation, everything. Um, and so myself and two other people, um, we decided that because of the conditions that were going on in prison, we were seeing a lot of deaths, and we didn't like the way TDC was responding to COVID-19. And so, because of that, the three of us, two other friends of mine, we got together and decided, let's put together a rally in Austin at the Capitol. And we were the driving forces of really organizing that. We connected with other Asian organizations such as Latino Justice, Statewide Leadership Council. Um, I think it ended up being a lot of different hands in it. Like we really connected with different organizations for their help and guidance from everything from like just to logistically put everything like when we get there, how it would be to speakers and everything. And it was a lot of work in that, a whole lot. It was very stressful putting it together and organizing it. However, it was, I mean, that I know of, it was one of the largest rallies for prison that was, coming there to advocate for change in prison, one of the largest ones I've seen yet. And it was an eye opener for a lot of people. And it was just, gosh, I don't even know the right words. It was something that really made us feel like, wow, this is huge. And our voices were heard, basically. We brought awareness to what we wanted to bring awareness to. It was on multiple different news stations. And that was part of the goal, was to bring awareness to the conditions inside Texas prison. So we went and made a lot of noise, and it was a good thing.
Yeah, it was amazing, and that's when I first met you, and I was still
Mhm.
living in East Texas, barely just getting off my ankle monitor, so I wasn't quite able to be there, but I certainly was in all the meetings, and what I really, you were a great example And there was some times that I felt like, well, I don't know what I'm doing in terms of advocacy. I don't know. And you, and your friends were like, well, we don't know what we're doing, but we're going to do it. And you just started doing it. And it's
Really.
like, that's what advocacy is. You just start taking action. And that rally it highlighted not just what was happening with COVID, but it really highlighted the conditions that already exist at those facilities. And that leads me into our main discussion. So tell us, when did you get to Hobby, and what was that experience like when you hit that unit?
Mm. Now, I think it was like a fate thing, to be honest with you. Like I literally like, so 2010, I'm at Plain State, which is where you go. Typically, it's a holdover unit before you go to your assigned unit. And I will never forget, I heard so many horror stories about Hobby unit. This was my second incarceration. The first one was in 2002, and I was on Lane Murray. However, I was just a horrible person at that time, and I was housed in that seg the whole time that I was at Lane Murray. So I really didn't know very many people unless you were housed. But however, anyway, so 2010, I'm at Plain State, and I heard so much negativity about the violence at Hobby. The day I pulled chain to go to Hobby, I literally prayed and was like, God, wherever you about to send me, please just don't let it be Hobby. And I'll
Mm.
be damned. It was Hobby. I got there, and the first day on the unit, I will never forget. You go before UCC, which is the Unit Classification Committee, and you go before them, and they are going to assign your housing, your job, your it's not trustee class, but your class, like if you're in general population or whatever. So they're gonna tell you all of that. And the UCC committee is made up of ranking officers. So it was like a major there. I want to say either the warden or assistant warden, and a lieutenant, maybe three or four people there. And I go before the UCC committee when I'm coming into the unit, and one of the first things the major said to me, I don't remember her name, but one of the first things she said to me was, she said, have you heard about Hobby? And I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, everything you heard is true. She said, if you want to stay alive, mind your business.
Oh my God.
And I said, okay. And anyways, they give me my housing. And while I'm walking to my dorm, this is first day on the unit, I'm walking to my dorm. On the rape yard is two women fighting. One of them has a blade and is literally slicing this other female. And the guard is just standing. There's one guard, a male guard, and he's standing there. He's not trying to break them up or anything. He's just yelling commands at them, stop, stop. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I gonna make it out of here alive? I was so afraid and so overwhelmed with fear.
Mhm.
I was just like, how am I gonna make it out of here alive? That's
And
all.
let me, I want to point out something in the middle of you telling that, is that you had just told us that you were housed in Seg at Lane Murray. So you're a tough girl, and I did a video about Lane Murray, and people know that that's among the top worst. So we've got Lavina, who who has done AdSec time, feeling this way when she walks into Hobby, and I just wanted to highlight that means it's bad. Please continue.
Yeah, like that major, she said it's killings here. She said there's a lot of stabbings, and she just said she was honest with me. She said, if you want to stay alive, mind your business, and that was it. So it was Hobby broke me. I'll say that. That was my second incarceration. Hobby, had I have gone to Hobby that first time in '02, I would have never done nothing else to get it locked up again. I would not have ever put myself in that predicament again. But Hobby, just the extreme conditions that we lived in at different times. Just deplorable. Like when I got there, they had just unnailed the our windows in the cells used to be nailed shut, and because of so many deaths that previous summer, they had just in the news people were there supposed that was like right before I got there, but they had just taken the nails out of the windows that were in the cells. And mind you, like there's really no need for the windows to be nailed shut because there's also a burglar bar on the window. And then we're talking about like a little window, not a regular size window that a body could, you'd have to be a really, really slim person to be able to fit through this window without the bar there. But there was no need to nail the windows shut, but they were nailed shut, which made it even hotter in the dorms. They started coming around, the officers did, to do like temperature checks in the dorms, to in the cell blocks, to see how hot it was. And so often it was like 125 degrees, and it was so hot so often that you would see the walls sweating, literally. Like the walls are kind, you would see like water, like sometimes like you could see the humidity on the walls because that's just how hot it was in there. One thing I shared it at that rally, but I'll never forget. My one of my cellies, um, we were both asleep like in the middle of the day, and I was on the bottom bunk, she was on top, and I woke up because I felt something like wet on my face, and when I looked up, she was asleep, but her hand was like hanging off the bed,
Mhm.
and the sweat was dripping from her fingertips and falling on my face. That's what it was that was wet that woke me up. For your fingertips to drip sweat, come on now, that like that's some heat.
It's pretty damn hot,
Yes,
and we try to explain to people just how hot. We're not talking uncomfortable,
mm-mm,
warm. We are talking. I tell people, get in your car in August and lock the door, make sure the window's up, and sit there and
mm-hmm,
sleep in there.
yeah,
That's the type of hot we're talking about.
mm-hmm,
Inhumane hot. And I'm glad you brought that up. That for a long time they had those windows nailed shut
mm-hmm, yep.
for no reason other than to
Further
just to nail them
punishment.
shut.
Yeah, it was horrible. But and it took so many people dying. I think it one summer, if I'm not mistaken, it was like 7 deaths over the summer, and that's what brought all the attention and why they ended up taking the nails out. But um, it was just unrealistic. Like we would wet our sheets every night to be able to sleep at night. We would wet our sheets, attach it to the fan at the end of our bunk, and so that the fan could like blow a little coolness off the sheet,
Mhm,
and that's how we would try to keep cool, or try to get some type of relief, because you weren't going to get cool, but you would get a
mhm,
little bit of relief at nighttime. But even at night it was like
mhm.
just stuffy and hot, and um, constantly like that. um,
Well, you mentioned, you wet your sheets, and so let's talk about the water. Let's talk about the plumbing and the water.
mm, mm, mm,
Marlin is known for having problems with their city water anyway, but the unit itself is the infrastructure is so bad. Can you talk a little bit? Because I've heard absolute horror stories about sewage and plumbing at Hobby. So can you tell
yeah.
us a little bit about those conditions?
Yeah, again, another area where the conditions were just not even for, just inhumane conditions. Literally, I still don't know how they got away with this. And hopefully it's better now, but the water was oftentimes brown. I don't know why or what was behind it, but um, that's what it was. And even if you could afford to buy enough water off commissary, you don't really have a place to store it because the box that you have to put your belongings, that everything needs to fit in this little bitty box. Is, I don't remember the dimensions of the box, but it's really small, that, and everything needs to fit in this box, everything you own, whatever you buy from commissary or whatever. And if it's stuff that's not in that box, it could get confiscated. So needless to say, we were forced to drink that water. I have a history of kidney stones, and because of that, I drink a lot of water just to keep my kidneys flush. So, like, I had no choice but to drink this brown water. Oftentimes, it smelled fishy, had a smell, weird smell to it. Um, Oftentimes there was no water. We went days, oftentimes, without being able to shower. Um, at one point, they did bring these really huge tanks outside for us to get water to drink, but that had a really weird odor to it as well, what they brought in. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, it was not good at all. And so, what's weird is that when I was incarcerated, I heard a lot of people like getting sick and going to medical and getting this diagnosis of H. pylori. I never heard of that in my life, but that was happening a lot. Um, and so, yeah, so I was there for 4 years. I had an 8 year sentence, and I was released after 4 years. I was released in 2014. And so I'll jump to my issue with the H. pylori real quick. 2000, actually, it was at the beginning of last year of 2021. So I been home for a few years, but I started having some weird symptoms with my stomach, like just being bloated all the time. And um, the bloating was the main thing. Like, I'm like, something is going on. Like, okay, so yeah, I started realizing that I was experiencing a lot of bloating with almost any little thing. And um, I think that's like the main symptom that I had. So my doctor, my PCP, did a bunch of tests. He couldn't find anything. But since I was still complaining about it, he sent me to it was a urologist or not, but he sent me to a specialty doctor, a specialist. Um, and they said, let's do an endoscopy and see what's going on in your stomach. So they put me to sleep, went into my stomach through my throat, and did a biopsy of my stomach. Took a little bit so they could test it. And um, lo and behold, I had H. pylori. Did a little research about it and learned that it's something that you can have for years and
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily know. However, I find it no coincidence that so many people on a unit had this, and now I have this. And out here, I don't really hear people talking about H. pylori. I don't know, like I don't hear people talking about that, you know. So um, I'm convinced that I got that from hobby. So,
Yeah.
and the treatment was multiple. I took like 3 or 4 different antibiotics for like a full 14 days, which was, and it was like a 3 time a day. That was a lot of pills
Mm-hmm.
that I had to, and then I had to get retested to make sure that it was gone. And so I was retested, and it's gone. And that was really scary to know that I have some parasite inside of
Yeah.
me, you know, that, yeah, it was very scary and frustrating, and like, yeah, very frustrating and scary time.
Well, and Lavina, it's just, it's sad because it's common knowledge. Like when the girls would transfer from Hobby over to Mountain View, or even when I did my time at Riverside, and this was back in the late 90s, it was common knowledge. You come from Hobby, you probably have H. pylori. Like it's just
Wow.
like the girls always came with stomach problems, and they would go to medical, and medical would ask them, where were you at? Hobby. Oh, well, then we'll test you for that. And it was just common knowledge. And that's, incredibly infuriating, like you said, and sad to know that TDCJ knows that's a problem, and they know it's because of their water and the plumbing. And what they'll say is, well, the city of Marlin has its issues too, and we can't control the city's water. But I think it has less to do with Marlin and more to do with that facility. I had a friend that was at Hobby for many years. She's still there. And she told me about, when the plumbing completely broke down, which it does often, like you mentioned, going days without water. And again, being locked in your car in the August heat and not having any water to cool off or drink, and being at the guard's mercy to bring around drinking water. But she said that,
Mhm.
sewage was backing up into their cells ankle deep.
Mhm.
And she said, Jennifer, we had no choice but to relieve ourselves in brown bags that we had hoarded from
Mhm.
Johnny's and throw them
On
down the
the
run,
run.
or
Yeah.
to get them out of our cell at least. She goes, I remember
Yeah.
sitting on the top bunk just because I didn't want to get down because the floor was covered in overflowing sewage. And
Oh yeah.
it's horrifying, and this unit has operated like this for years. um,
Mhm.
and so you definitely hit it on the head when you said these conditions were inhumane, deplorable. And I think that's one of the biggest reason among women. Like you said, I think we all said that prayer coming out of Plain State or reception. Dear Lord, please send me anywhere. Please don't send me to Hobby. Because of that, but also because of the violence, like you mentioned. Seeing that just immediately when you got there, and I hear a lot about violence, between the women, but also the staff, the
Oh
officers,
yeah.
violence against the women incarcerated there. So can you tell us if you experienced that or saw any of that?
Oh, most definitely. Even some of the officers have fought each other, like on the unit. That unit is just so rowdy and violent, just nonstop. But most definitely, it was a constant thing, a frequent thing to see roommates cut each other up, and um, you see that often. You see guards not do anything to intervene. I would see a lot of people getting like jumped by couples, and it was just to the extreme. I'll never forget one time I was in two building and one roommate literally killed the other one, and they put the yellow tape up and everything after I don't think I've ever seen so many people leave a prison and on a stretcher that were deceased, like so many deaths. Like it was a lot of deaths on that unit due to the violence, and it just didn't seem like the officers or anyone on the unit really cared enough to try to like figure out a way to prevent it from happening, even when it was happening, to try to intervene and stop it. That just didn't happen. And so for me, I just primarily stuck to myself. I kind of had discernment and knew like people that it was that were, I guess, safe to connect with, and I connected with those people, and the other ones I just kind of stayed out the way. I had several fights with roommates. So another thing, like at Hobby, like it's a lot of bullying there. A lot of people, especially within the cells, a lot of cellies try to bully you into doing things that they want you to do and make up all kind of rules and stuff. And if you don't comply, then you fight. And so I had fights with several of my cellies, and it was like survival mode.
Right.
And yeah, I literally like each time I got a set off or whatever. I'm like, gosh, it's like, am I gonna make it out of here? alive, or am I going to be one of them? Especially you see so many people get wheeled out with a white sheet over them. Um, that was just a phone call that I never wanted my family to have to get. And it's a constant traumatizing, constantly being traumatized. That's what it is. Prison is really traumatizing, and being on a unit that's that violent is extremely traumatizing. To see so much violence, never knowing if it's going to be you next, see so many deaths, not knowing if that's going to be you next, the medical issues. Are you going, is your health just going to decline? And, from drinking this water, are you going to die like that? It's like you literally stay in fight or flight mode until you walk out the door, literally, because between the conditions itself and the violence, you're like, which one might take me out?
Well, exactly. And it's so interesting that, you know, you experienced this and you saw this, but we very rarely ever hear TDCJ acknowledge those deaths.
Oh,
I can't even remember. I think maybe one reported publicized COVID death, but through the years with the violence and the heat,
you're
didn't
right.
hear it very, very often. The TDCJ will say, "Oh, that doesn't exist like that," and they may label that death as something else. But what you're telling us is that no,
No.
I'm there, I saw it, and I'm telling you,
No,
it's
you
from
knew
violence.
when somebody, or even the heat, especially the heat and the violence, when someone literally passed out from heat exhaustion. We all, if you were doing time there, you knew what was going on. And you're right, they don't acknowledge that. They'll say that it's, natural causes, or they'll say something else when we know that we don't even have water, and not everybody's drinking the brown water. Some people are like, I ain't drinking that, and trying to survive off of juice and coffee. Like, no, you got to have water to survive. And you mix that with extreme heat conditions and temperatures, yeah, you probably will literally get baked to death. And that's what was going on. And we saw it. And you're right, there's no accountability. TDC doesn't acknowledge those deaths. If you ask them, were there ever like 6 or 7 deaths within one summer? They're not going to acknowledge that. But us that was on that unit when that happened during that time, we knew what's going on. And so that's very fearful. And it's really extremely sad that just as a human, like, this isn't death row. And even if it was, but nobody was sentenced to die here. And so to get baked alive, basically, or to be in a situation where there's no protection. I mean, the guards are supposed to be there to secure, to ensure safety, but to know that somebody could just come and start slicing you in the chow hall and nobody's going to intervene, nobody's going to try to help to save you. Just the humanity, just the human compassion alone should cause at least the officers that were paid to do that job enough to say, whoa, let me intervene. But that just doesn't happen like that.
Well, and during COVID, towards maybe the end of 2020, I was hearing from the girls at Hobby, and they're saying, we are sick. These dorms are full of sick people. And,
Wow.
TDCJ had the big dashboard. And I said, they're not reporting anybody sick at Hobby. Not like this. I think they had maybe reported 1 or 2 at the time. And she's like, listen to me. The entire dorm is sick. She said, Jennifer, the officers know it. They were bringing the big trash bag full of the Johnnies. She said, they're not even counting. They're opening the door because she lived in the area that the dorm that is with cubicles.
Okay, yeah.
She said they open the door. She goes, Jennifer, they're too afraid to even come in and count. They bring those Johnnies and throw the bag into the dorm and shut the door.
Wow. I
And
could only
so,
imagine, and during COVID, to be at Hobby in the midst of the pandemic. Whoa. Uh,
And with the staff shortages, all the things you're telling us now, it's got to be um, even worse.
I could only imagine. You're right. It has to be, and I wonder often, like, I wonder if the water still, if they're still having the same issue with the water, or if they've rectified it and, they fixed it up now. You know, like we'd go for days literally without being able to shower. We had to eat Johnny's because they couldn't cook in the kitchen because there's water issues. There was no water. So just surviving off of the Johnnies, which a lot of times those were not. Oh my goodness, the Johnnies. Oftentimes, like sometimes we get a chicken patty that's like still frozen in the
Mm-hmm.
middle, still
Mm-hmm.
frozen. Not even like did they even warm it? Like that they could have at least looked it. Like
Right.
dang, stuff that you wouldn't even feed your dog. Like come on.
Yeah. Um, there was a little bit of discussion with my friends and Wayne, uh, pros and cons. My friend Silos had left a comment that said, well, there's pros and cons to this, she said, Hobby wasn't as petty. The officers weren't as petty as say Mountain View or Crane with compliance. There's Mountain View is that type of abuse is on a whole different level. It's a
Mhm.
psychological abuse that I'll discuss in another video. But uh, she's like, well, I did my time well there, and it was laid back and not petty, and you could do what you want. Which I asked her, what are you meaning? Are you meaning that you could do what you want, as in terms of go to rec and go to programs? Or are you meaning I could get away with whatever I wanted to? And if that's what it is, which to each his own. But everything that you're talking about, that comes with a price, and that comes with not having safety. That comes with, like you said, just at any moment anything could happen and nobody's going to intervene. um,
Mhm.
you know and and I know that we all like to get away with our stuff and do our things that made our time easier, but in a place like this, I'm just thinking that is not a good thing, and it perpetuates the very violent things and
Mhm.
bad conditions that you're talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely perpetuates violence, like you said. And I mean, if you're what's considered a bad actor, you know, um, someone, you like to be out of place a lot. You like to be able to do what you want to do, basically. Then, maybe hobby, you wouldn't consider Hobby Hill like I did and many others did. But if you just want to do your time and make it out alive and to your family and move on with your life so you can put this behind you, hobby's going to be very difficult because you really just trying to stay alive. Literally, you every day is like a blessing. Like, okay, I made it. Talking about one day at a time. Yeah, it's like one day at a time. I made it through the day. All right, let's see what tomorrow brings because you never know.
And
Yeah.
you said it well, and I hear Maggie say this a lot too. Is when we're in prison, whatever unit it is, um, and I think Jorge was kind of alluding to this in a comment earlier this week. All prisons are bad; they're all terrible.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
you could have the nicest conditions, but the fact it we are all in survival mode. And Maggie said a lot of
Yeah.
times you can't embrace programming or you can't embrace things because you are in that fight or flight all the time. But at Hobby, like you said, it's 100% all the time. I'm in survival mode. Period. No
Mhm.
rest, no break, just all the time. And what that does to a person's mental health and their physical health is far more damaging than one could even imagine.
Most definitely. And even I was amazed at the number of officers that would commit violent acts against the people that were incarcerated there. Like so often you would see, officers that would really try to provoke just violent situations and would egg people on and just really, and will literally fight someone, an inmate, and you think like, okay, they're losing their job. No, they'd be at work the next day. Like, where's the accountability? You just jumped on, someone that you're supposed to be protecting after you antagonize them and really provoke the situation. Like, petty, like the officers there are extremely petty and like to like just really instigate just violence. And you wouldn't expect that. You just wouldn't expect that, especially from the way TDC portrays their officers. If you go on their website, you'll see this professional and, looking, and at certain units, that's just not what you get. It's just for photo ops or whatever. I don't know, but that's not what you get. Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. That's a good lead into what I want to talk about next. Because you're right. I think every unit has its own culture, and there is a level of that everywhere. It's just it's higher at some units and it goes a little bit lower at other units. In terms of the officers and their culture and being professional. Mm-hmm. But of course, that is the face that TDCJ puts on. And that culture at a unit, I've always believed was the responsibility of those in leadership positions, because I know when Warden Nelson was at Mountain View, and we had our problems at that unit. It was a different type of abuse, but officers towed the line for the most part because of her example and her leadership.
That's right.
And so we could see the shift and the change in the officers when the warden would change. And some of them would transfer to other units. They're like, I can't deal with this. I'm not going to. And you just kind of, you see that attitude. But, a culture as bad as hobbies has been embedded for a long time. So I want to show everybody this, and everybody who knows me knows I hate this fucking news clip. I do, with a passion. And it's really hard to articulate why. I'm not hating on the lady for retiring as a warden, or her career, or her love of Baylor basketball, because Lord knows I love women's basketball. That's not it. It really highlights just what you said about that front, that pretending everything is okay when we know that it's not. And I also think, Lavina, sometimes when we were testifying at the Capitol on stuff, is that upper leadership, especially in Huntsville and in Austin, they really don't. They really believe things are as picture perfect as presented, because they don't go to the unit and they have no idea what the daily life is. But this clip is about the people that ran Hobby for so many years during the years that you were talking about, and a little bit before and after. So I'm going to try to share my screen. Lord,
I want to comment real quick on that and just say that what was interesting also was that whenever there was an audit happening, or they were going to have an inspection or something, they knew like a few days before. And so everything, like the whole shift on the unit, like they make sure everything was like top notch, in order, really clean. Everybody's on their best behavior at that time so I guess it's supposed to be like a thing like within the system to hold the units accountable, to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. However, when they know beforehand that this inspection or audit is happening, it leaves too much room for it to be just foul play, or
just swept under the rug and put a pretty face on. Let's cut the grass, and we're gonna have a really good lunch, and everybody's getting clean clothes today.
It makes it pointless. Pointless.
So. Absolutely. And that's why we were telling legislators, can y'all just make surprise visits? Can you just go into a unit? And, there's a lot of politics to that, which is so frustrating. But if we just had a surprise inspection one day that someone would go into Hobby and really, and I want to highlight a case that I was talking about today, and then we'll get to this clip that makes me so mad. So there was a Texas Youth Commission facility in the 90s where I had been at, and was transferred over to boys being at this facility. And it was so atrocious. We suffered a lot of terrible abuse, a lot of what you're describing, like at Hobby, if not worse in other ways. And so to rectify this, they took the girls out and put boys there. And then lo and behold, 10 years later, they had word that there was more abuse at this facility, which the Juvenile Justice Department is rife with sexual abuse and abuse, period. It's horrifying. So an inspector from TYC showed up unannounced, and she said, "Let me in." And it was run by a private corporation, actually. But still, it's a contract of the state. And they were like, "Oh, we weren't expecting you. We can't really give you a tour." She said, "I told you to let me in." And so they had to let her in, and her team. They took pictures, and they said, "You know, this young man, this one, have him meet me in here, and I want to talk to him." And, you know, the staff there was shitting in their pants, because this was horrendous, Hobby level, bad conditions. You can look up the report, and it has pictures. It's absolutely terrible. And by the end of the day, this woman called and said, "Bring me buses and get these children out of here today." And it was the only time, Lavina, in the 27 years that I have been experiencing this broken system that was meant to rehabilitate me and set my life straight, which, praise God, he did that all on his own. But it was the only time I can really remember somebody just stepping in and intervening and doing something. You know, but of course they, once again, "Oh, we're going to take care of this, and this is a systematic problem." And then a couple of years later, "Oh, there's still abuse here. Oh, well, let's change TYC to the Texas Juvenile Justice Department. We're going to overhaul it." And then we see more abuse. There was a recent, just 2 or 3 days ago, it wasn't the juvenile system, but it was the foster care system. A facility out in Bastrop was sexually trafficking the young girls in foster care there. So it's like this stuff has to be investigated, and people have to invest in the people that are in those facilities, and invest in the staff in a meaningful way, so that this stuff doesn't happen. So it can work if inspections are not political and actually done with true intent to fix the problem.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, just like the officers, city officers are now starting to be held accountable for unjustly killing people in the streets. I think that this is the start of a shift in that area, and it will take the same thing in TDC. When officers, wardens, all start being held accountable, that's when some change may happen as far as these inhumane conditions and the way they treat people and get away with it. But until then, and you don't really see TDC being held accountable very much at all. So,
No, we continue our fight for independent oversight, which would hopefully help. So I'm going to show the clip. Let's pray this works correctly, because technology is still, I'm still an old lady figuring out how to use this stuff. But I would like everyone, as they watch this, to keep in mind the things that Lavina has shared with us about this facility and about the staff and the climate, the conditions, and the culture. Just really hold that in your space as you watch this clip, and we'll see if everybody kind of had those feelings that I did. So let's see. Let me share. Add it to the stream, Jennifer. You can do this. All right, and you see here. Lady Bear's coach visits high security women's prison unit. And this is Hobby. And there is Warden Nelson, who became a regional director in the pink, who I have a lot of respect for. Coach Mulkey in the middle there. And then Hobby's warden that retired over there in the light baby blue shirt. And then people walking around. And so we're going to listen to this clip, and we'll see if Jennifer is overreacting or what.
A Central Texas prison warden is now officially retired. Today was her very last day on the job.
Now, it could have been a day of tears and well wishes. Instead, surprises and great joy as she got to meet her role model.
News 10's Christy Soto tells us why Baylor coach Kim Mulkey paid her the special visit.
What would have been a sad day for Warden Vicki Wright turned into one of the best days of her life. She was surprised on her last day of work by her role model, Lady Bear's coach, Kim Mulkey.
How about that, huh? Wish I could be retiring. Huh?
No.
I do.
It's surreal. She's an amazing lady. Her values and what she does out there with those girls is kind of what we do in here.
Mulkey said she just had to do this.
If it's important for somebody to think that a warden's retiring and she loves me and the Lady Bears, the least I could do if I have the time is to come over here and just say something to her and thank her for being a Lady Bear fan.
Wright has worked at the Hobb unit in Marlin for the last 31 years. And during her time there, she's influenced the lives of many.
She's made a difference, both for the facilities and for the individuals, myself included.
That she has done so much for me and she has influenced so many people. And I hope to be a warden one day. And I want to be just like her.
Wright says this place has been her home away from home. And these people are her family.
I wouldn't expect any less of them to try to make something special for me just because that's where their heart is. They're just really good people.
I'd like to give you a basketball from us.
This Lady Bears season ticket holder says she will definitely be making stops at the Farrell Center this season, cheering on the team she loves and watching her role model she now knows in action. In Marlin, Christy Soto, KWTX, News 10.
And while she was there, Coach Mulkey also shared some words of encouragement with some of the inmates as well. What a special day.
Yes, and I expect nothing less. She's such a class act. And of course, she took time to talk to some of the inmates there.
Very nice.
And what an inspiration that had to have been for those young ladies there.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
Wow.
So I just want to make a few points. Miss Vicky mentioned that, hey, I love the Baylor Bears because what she does with her girls is the same thing we do with ours about values and really focusing on values. And they mentioned that she had worked at Hobby 31 years.
I noticed that. I don't remember her being a warden while I was there. Was she not assistant warden? She was a head warden?
Well, she could have possibly been a CO for years, or maybe a rank or something.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know the particulars. I just know that Miss Wright had known the Hobby facility a long time, and they took
and
the
they
tour.
do a damn thing to try to. Look.
It just makes me so angry because it really illustrates what the point you made, that everybody can in TDCJ will paint a picture of how something is, but that is not what's going on behind those gates. And for her to take this woman to one of those cells and show her that cell and let me note, you guys, that this was in August of 2018. And like Lavina said, August is the prime
hottest
fucking month in the state of Texas.
Mhm.
So as they're showing the unit and talking about what we're working wonderfully and she's an inspiration for what she's done here, it is 120 degrees in that cell that she just showed. And while they're celebrating and eating cake and talking about what a great job they're all doing, those women were suffocating in those cells.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Yeah.
just, it crawls all over me. And I didn't even do my time at Hobby. So I just wanted to show it. I just wanted to show it and get your,
Yeah.
as somebody that was there and kind of watching that, knowing what was happening with the girls at the unit while they're doing this little TV clip. You know, how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel like I wish I could put her in a cell in August. And and I want you to say that your officers are doing such a great job and have that same attitude. Like, it's really sad, you know, because I know the truth, and to see her like just trying to depict Hobby and the officers there as this the best people, best officers, they're just phenomenal, you know, when that's the farthest thing from the truth. Where's the integrity? Like, you know, where were you when all the deaths were happening? Where were you when, you know, when people were drinking brown water? Where were you when we don't even have, for months, we wouldn't even have deodorant at the store? Months, literally, several months. Like, you know, like where were you as a woman, you know, and to be the overseer of so many women, you know, that are just trying to serve their time. Where were you to help all of these different issues that were going on, a lack of medical and everything? Like, as a warden, you could really shift the whole unit. And like you mentioned earlier, I believe that the management, you know, warden, the ranking, are those, they set the tone for the unit. And because of that tone, her real tone of being this, I don't care, I don't give a damn, you know, just the officers conducted themselves like that because they knew that boss was good with it.
Right. You make an excellent point. And I said that to somebody today that, you know, it starts with leadership. And if it's clear, you know, that your boss doesn't give a damn, then you don't give a damn either most of the time. Maybe you have an inner integrity that guides you, but the people in leadership roles set the tone. And I guess that clip just makes me so upset because I know what happens at that facility, and you do from a lived experience. And to have women in leadership roles overseeing a facility of women, and this is just acceptable, is mind blowing. And again, I want to say it's not. I'm not trashing the lady. Good for her for retiring or whatever, but I'm saying that presentation just leaves a very bad taste in, I think, both parts.
And it should. It shows a lack of empathy, just basic humanity. You know, it just shows that, and it really exposes her heart. So anyone that's been there, anyone that's been anywhere incarcerated, and to see that, even if it was a different unit, it should infuriate you because you know the real, and you know that. Come on now.
Right. And hearing the newscasters at the end saying, you know, that was really wonderful for the ladies really there at the unit to hear the inspiration from Coach Mulkey. Well, just as a side note too, as a woman in a leadership role, and as Baylor University being a school of faith, they have done nothing with college or programming or volunteer work or anything in any of the units in Gatesville. And they're one of the closest universities to that area. And, you know, speaks a lot about their values. And it's sad as a faith institution, but, you know, that's for another time, I guess.
All I can say, anybody that makes it out of there alive, you know, hey, you ready for the world. Don't get out here and let the world break you down after you survive something like that. You just know that you can overcome whatever life throws at you.
That's right. You're absolutely right. And me and Alexa, you know, Alexa, well, and BF Diane, we all have that discussion of, you know, there are times out here that I get frustrated, you know, when I was on my monitor and working Subway and Goodwill and having relationship issues and just feeling old symptoms of mental health issues. And, Alexa always articulates it clearly to me, and Diane. Jennifer, you survived one of the worst prison systems in the country. And you survived the things that were done to you prior to prison. You survived carrying the guilt and the pain of the things that you've done and the things they did to us while we were there. You can handle it. You got this. Our very, how do they say it? Our worst days out here are far better than our good days in there. So, So and this is why I do the things that I do in my advocacy and the things that you do in your career and your work. And I often do things that I'm not paid for because I want to make sure that we have a space for all of us to still connect to and support one another. So.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is mental health, because I didn't escape all of that without my mental health being impacted. And so knowledge really is power. And when you start learning about mental health illnesses, it can really, really empower you to be able to move forward in life, because after witnessing and being around so much violence and just so much unjust, I don't know how anyone could escape that without their mental health being impacted. And post-incarceration syndrome, which is basically a type of PTS that is associated with people that were incarcerated. And that's something that really impacted me after I got out. Anxiety, depression, all of it is stuff that I've struggled with in a major way that was impacted by my incarceration, and but learning about it, being in this field has really, really empowered me to be able to recognize when things are going on, when whether it's anxiety or depression or whatever, to recognize this is what's going on and to be able to properly manage it rather than not really being able to identify what I'm experiencing or why I'm experiencing that. And it can leave you overwhelmed and frustrated and make you feel stuck in life. Like, what's going on? I'm not moving forward. Why? When a lot of it could be your mental health if you were incarcerated. So.
Thank you, Lavina. I certainly would have never been able to express that as eloquently as you did. And I value your insight, your lived experience, and the wonderful work that you continue to do to help all of us and the ladies that we have left behind. I do want to let everyone know that tomorrow will be my first meeting with my new advocacy group of formerly incarcerated women. So if you're a formerly incarcerated woman from Texas, please join us. The group is called Lioness. And the reason why I picked that name was because I just tried to think of what would symbolize female power, and what greater symbol than a female lion, because they stay together for life. Even when the men wander away, they're together for life. They hunt together and they look after their young and each other. And so I like to say we need to pull our pride together and look after each other, because, I just get tired of people speaking for us. We know our own experience. So anyone watching, you can register for that meeting. I'll be posting another reminder, and we'll be doing that tomorrow night around 5:30. So I'd love for y'all to join me. And so Lavina, now I know you've seen my videos, and I like to end on a happy note. So I'm going to ask you that question that everybody dreads. So if you had a favorite Taylor Swift song, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. And
all right, and yet Maggie always says, "Shake It Off." I'm like, Maggie, that's the only song you know. She goes, I know, and somebody just told me that was a title.
I'm with Maggie on that one, shoot.
Okay, well, you know what? Tell us what your favorite song is.
Oh goodness, I can't say I have a favorite song. One of my favorite songs. Hmm. Uh, I think I'd say "Still" by Tamia. Um, yeah, that's one that I could listen on repeat for about 10 to 15 times.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna. I've never heard it, so I'm gonna look it up and see what that's all about. And you know, you look
Are
up
you in
Taylor
love? If
Swift.
you're in love, you like it.
Oh. No, I always am. But I certainly appreciate you being here, and I really enjoyed this, and I hope everybody got something out of it. And I can't wait to see what you do, you know, with TABP and your fellowship and all the wonderful things you're doing. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me on the Rec Yard. Yeah, it's been a pleasure, and I'm an open book. So yeah, anything I could share to really get the truth out, which needs to get out. Like more people that's done time on hobby should, or done time at all. Be willing anywhere. It doesn't matter where you've been. Be willing to share your experience because your truth may be different from mine, but we all got to speak our truth and really, let it be known what your experience was because it helps.
That's right. That's how we create change. So
Mm-hmm.
okay, cool. Well, we'll make another rec date to do this again.
All right.
All right.
Awesome.
Thanks.
All right. You're welcome.
Good night, y'all.
Good night.